The Woman in the Glass by Cordelia Cross. The first time she noticed, it was subtle. A line around her reflection's eye she did not yet feel. A crease near the corner of her mouth she had ignored in the mirror that morning. She rubbed at it, convinced it was the play of light, a shadow she had overlooked. She had spent the day at work, running on coffee and deadlines, leaving her apartment only to pick up groceries she barely remembered buying. Her reflection had followed her the entire way. It had watched her shuffle into the bathroom that evening, tired enough to want sleep, and in the mirror it looked back at her with a face that whispered exhaustion more vividly than her own. At first she thought it was just stress. Everyone said work was wearing her thin. She smiled at her reflection, a small, tired smile, and the eyes were older than they had any right to be. "Stop," she muttered under her breath. "Stop trying to trick me." The reflection tilted its head. Its voice was not a voice she could hear, but a vibration under her skin, a tugging at the edges of her consciousness. It wanted her to notice. She tried to look away, tried to ignore it, but her reflection lingered, pressing closer, leaning forward in a way that made the glass feel like a membrane between two worlds. She went to bed early, dreamless, or she told herself it was. But when she woke, the line near her eye had deepened slightly, and her reflection had grown older again, almost imperceptibly, but undeniably. At breakfast, she caught herself staring longer than necessary into the silvered surface of the toaster. Even in that tiny reflection, she saw it. The same warning she refused to accept. Lines forming where there should not be lines. Shadows beneath her eyes that did not belong to her body. Her reflection had started trying to speak. Not with words, not with sound, but with motion. A tilt of the head, a gesture with a finger she could not see fully, the way a hand reaches for help but cannot cross the boundary. It was frantic now, the older version of herself, pleading, warning. She laughed softly, a little hysterically, and pressed her palm against the mirror. "Stop it! Stop this! You are not real." The reflection mirrored her, but it trembled, the edges of its form blurring slightly as if it were trying to push through. Its eyes were wide and luminous, wide enough to make her own heart ache. She froze. The reflection raised a hand again, slowly, deliberately, as if counting each finger, and then pressed its palm to the other side of the glass. The glass rippled beneath its touch. A shiver ran down her spine. "You need to listen," she thought she heard, but it was not a voice she could place. It was inside her head, vibrating along her ribs. "You are disappearing." She pulled away, startled. Her reflection had stopped mimicking her movements entirely, and now seemed fully present on its own, a version of herself she did not recognize. Lines carved her fatigue into permanence. The skin sagged with stress she had not acknowledged. She had spent so long giving herself away to work, to people, to obligations, that the reflection looked older than she did because it carried all the weight she refused to shoulder consciously. She turned from the mirror, convinced she was losing her mind. But the reflection stayed there, vibrating, beckoning, insisting. She had a choice. She could ignore it and continue the pattern, or she could step closer and listen. Her fingers trembled as she reached toward the mirror again. Her reflection mirrored her, older, trembling too. Then it smiled, small, almost tender, and pressed its palm fully against the glass, and she realized it wanted her to move forward through it, to trust it. She hesitated. Fear gripped her chest, but underneath it, a desperate hope surged. Maybe it was not trying to frighten her. Maybe it was trying to save her. The reflection nodded, and in that silent gesture, she felt the first stirrings of trust. It had waited long enough. She had ignored the signs too long. She swallowed, pressed her hand against the mirror, and the surface gave way. Cold, liquid glass poured over her fingers, pulling her in. And in the instant before she disappeared from her room entirely, she glimpsed the life she could have if she stopped running, if she began to care for herself. She fell forward into light and possibility, leaving the tired lines of her old life clinging to the surface behind her. The world on the other side of the glass was not the same as the one she had left. The air shimmered with color, soft and warm, though unfamiliar. It smelled faintly of rain and something sweet she could not name, like the memory of a flower she had never seen. Light pooled differently here, softer but insistent, highlighting spaces she had never allowed herself to inhabit. She staggered, unsteady at first, feeling the weight of her own body in a way she had long neglected. The older reflection followed her through the liquid glass, no longer trapped, older but steady, a guide and a reminder. It did not speak, but its presence hummed a truth she could not ignore. A figure appeared across the distance, tall and cautious. Not someone she recognized, not yet, but the body language spoke to her, familiar and gentle. She felt her heart accelerate, the first real pulse of desire she had allowed herself in months. She moved toward the figure, and it mirrored her movements, hesitant, curious. They did not need names. Not yet. The space between them was enough. When they walked together, it was as if the world had widened around her, allowing room for laughter she had stifled, for breath she had denied herself. The reflection stayed behind at first, letting her step fully into this new possibility. Then, over the course of days that felt like weeks, it faded gently, allowing her to occupy the life it had been guarding, showing her what could bloom if she finally took care of herself. She built routines here that had been impossible before. Mornings that belonged to her, not dictated by alarms or obligations. Meals cooked slowly, books read for pleasure, walks taken at her own pace. She noticed the sun differently, the way it fell on leaves, the way shadows lingered in the corners of rooms. And then, slowly, silhouettes began to appear. At first they were vague, shadows of bodies with movements that suggested presence without insistence. One was tall and gentle, laughing silently, hands extended in welcome. Another moved with careful patience, holding space for her and the one who had arrived first. They were her possibilities, the shapes of a family she had always dreamed of but never allowed herself to imagine fully. She reached out to touch them, and her fingers brushed empty air, yet it felt real. Every movement she made was mirrored in potential. She could feel their warmth, their laughter like a tide moving over her. Her chest ached with the knowledge that she could hold these lives, but only if she continued to honor herself first. The reflections of her own hands had guided her here, but now she could shape life for herself without the warnings. Silhouettes of children appeared too, small and restless, spinning through the rooms and hallways, voices that were almost sound yet full of promise. Faces remained vague, unformed, allowing her imagination to breathe. She could see herself holding them, guiding them, teaching them to carve space for themselves just as she had learned to carve it for her own heart. She laughed truly for the first time in years. The sound startled her because it had been dormant for so long. The world of mirrors had been strange, frightening, urgent, but now it felt safe, expansive. And then she realized the greatest truth her reflection had shown her. This life, the one she could live fully, without sacrifice, without wearing herself down for the needs of others first, was not punishment or fantasy. It was the natural consequence of saying yes to herself, of honoring her own boundaries, of loving the self that had been too long ignored. Her reflection appeared again in a corner of the room, younger now, almost indistinguishable from herself, smiling softly. Not pleading, not frantic. Just present, a silent guardian of the life she had begun to embrace. The silhouettes moved around her, weaving through her days. No faces, no names yet, but every shape suggested warmth, joy, laughter, and shared presence. She felt the pulse of possibility in each of them, and with every heartbeat, she understood that she could live fully, not just survive. Days blurred into one another in the mirror world, but time felt different here. It was softer, slower, and every moment was dense with possibility. She woke to light that wrapped around her like silk, stretching across the floor, warming her skin. The air was sweet and alive, carrying the hum of life she had almost forgotten existed. The silhouettes were always there, moving through the periphery of her vision, waiting but never intruding. She learned their rhythms, the quiet shapes of their lives, how to exist alongside them without losing herself in their presence. The tall figure would tilt its head when she laughed. The children would spin through her vision in restless circles, reminding her of movement, freedom, and play. She could feel their warmth even without seeing faces, and it was enough. She began to shape spaces in the house with intention. Rooms filled with light, with books, with music. Small corners dedicated to reading, to painting, to meals made slowly and savored. She cooked not for anyone else but herself, experimenting with flavors, with textures, with the pleasure of creation. For the first time, she could feel her body responding, her energy returning, a pulse of life she had forgotten existed under the weight of work, duty, and sacrifice. One evening, she lingered in front of the mirror that had brought her here, tracing the surface with her fingertips. Her reflection appeared, younger than the first one she had met, calmer, serene. It did not pull at her, did not warn or tremble. It simply existed, a quiet reminder of the life she had chosen to inhabit. She turned and found herself surrounded by the silhouettes. One leaned slightly toward her, its movements gentle, deliberate. Another circled slowly, brushing against her imagination with the promise of companionship, trust, and intimacy. And the children, shapes small and restless, their outlines soft and inviting, gathered around her, circling like sunlight caught in motion. It was in their presence that she felt the first trace of something she had almost forgotten: love without expectation, connection without sacrifice. She could hold them all in her mind, her heart stretching to encompass the warmth of possibility. Each shape, each movement, each silent presence was a promise of the life she could build, one she would not lose to work or obligation or self-neglect. She reached for the tall figure, letting her hand hover over its outline. Its fingers brushed hers in that space between the real and the possible, and she felt the electric surge of intimacy, a connection both tender and unpressured. It was a love she could hold without losing herself, a partnership that did not require her collapse into selflessness. The children moved around them, weaving through their shadows, chasing light and possibility, and she felt herself expand to hold it all. She paused, listening to the soft hum of the mirror world, the gentle presence of the silhouettes, the reflection watching silently. She realized something important. This life, this possibility had always been hers. The mirror had been the doorway, the reflection a guide, but the shapes, the warmth, the intimacy, the love, they were all born from her choice to honor herself, to set boundaries, to finally care for herself as she had cared for everyone else. And in that choice, the world around her blossomed. Shadows of potential formed into patterns she could recognize, movements that were hers to shape, days that she could live fully, richly, tenderly. The silhouettes shifted with her, mirroring her steps, laughing in quiet, unformed voices, dancing in the spaces she had made. She let herself smile, wide and unguarded, and for the first time in years, she felt complete. She woke to sunlight pooling in the corners of rooms she had arranged for herself. The air was alive, carrying warmth, carrying possibility. She could feel it in her bones, in her pulse, in the slow expansion of her chest that had long been constricted by exhaustion, by worry, by the endless surrender to everyone else. The silhouettes moved around her, soft and patient. The tall figure stood near her side, waiting, its shape shifting gently with her gaze. The children spun through the hallways in restless loops, laughing in soundless voices, brushing against her imagination with the promise of life, of love, of days built not on duty but on choice. She smiled, letting herself breathe, letting herself exist. Her reflection appeared again, faint at first, appearing in every mirror she passed. It was neither frantic nor aged. It shimmered softly, serene, a guardian of the life she had been allowed to enter. It no longer reached for her or pleaded. Instead, it simply existed, a quiet reminder of the path she had taken, the choice she had made to stop disappearing into the needs of others. She touched the surface of a mirror lightly, feeling the ripple beneath her fingertips. The older, warning version had released her. The life beyond it, full of warmth and light, was hers entirely. The reflection bowed slightly, and she understood that she had been given the gift of herself, fully, without compromise. The silhouettes moved closer, shaping the world around her with their presence. Faces remained undefined, allowing her to imagine the life she wanted without being constrained. She saw herself holding them, guiding them, shaping a home with laughter and light and love. She could feel mornings with small hands reaching for hers, evenings with stories whispered in quiet, and years filled with the gentle hum of connection and care. The tall figure extended a hand, and she took it without hesitation. There was intimacy here, yes, but it was balanced, tender, unhurried. A love that did not require collapse. A partnership built on choice, on respect, on the freedom to be herself. The children circled around them, chasing the light, chasing possibility, and she felt herself expand to hold it all. She laughed, a full, unrestrained sound, startling in its purity. The silhouettes responded, their shapes shifting like echoes of joy, filling every corner of the mirror world with life and movement. She could feel the warmth of their presence, the unspoken promise that she could live fully, that she could thrive without guilt, without sacrifice, without wearing herself away. She realized then that the mirror, the reflection, the older version of herself, they had all been guides. They had shown her the danger of neglecting her own needs, the way stress and self-sacrifice could age her, dim her, drain her essence. But the life beyond the glass, the one she was now inhabiting, was proof of the other truth. She could reclaim herself. She could set boundaries. She could care for others without losing herself. She could exist fully, richly, and without apology. The sun shifted across the room, touching the silhouettes in fleeting light, casting soft shadows that danced alongside her own. She stepped forward, and the shapes followed, weaving into her movements, expanding the space, making room for every heartbeat, every breath. She felt the pulse of life beneath her skin, the quiet rhythm of possibility in every corner of the mirror world. Her reflection smiled one last time, serene, almost maternal in its calm, and faded from the glass. She was alone now, yet never lonely, because she carried everything she needed within her: the warmth, the love, the laughter, the freedom. She could live this life fully, and she would every day, every moment, without compromise. The silhouettes lingered, soft and bright, a chorus of shapes and possibility. She could see the life she had always wanted, not fully formed but alive, waiting to be shaped by her choices. The tall figure leaned close, the children spun around her feet, and she laughed again, letting the sound carry through the world she had built. And for the first time, she understood what it meant to truly live. The mirror world was no longer a warning. It was a home. She stepped forward, and the silhouettes followed,